We have the panelists for this session, and I'm so excited for this. So we have Dr. Zimba from Malawi, we have Moketsi from Botswana, we have Yasa from Zambia, and we are going to have another panelist from Namibia. Then we have Joshua, who is from Kenya as well. Is there anyone who wanted to share their screen at any point in time, or will you just be speaking through without sharing your screen at any point?
Yeah, on my part, I'll just be talking.
Okay, that's fine.
Sam, I will just be talking.
Same.
Okay.
Doreen, same here. No page for me. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, that's okay. Okay, fine. Let's just calm nerves and wait for the other participants to join. So I'll just give us a 5-minute break to just relax, and then we'll start the session immediately at the top of the hour.
At least assure us that Professor Joshua Bejo is joining us.
Yes, he will join.
Yeah, so really excited to hear from him.
Yes. So as per the program, he's going to join at 5 p.m. So I say ST. Okay, so we will reconvene in 5 minutes. Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. So welcome to the Building Brilliance Under Constraints Southern African AI Talent webinar. We've had other webinars as well in West Africa, North Africa, and East Africa. So my name is Doreen Abiru, and I'll be moderating today's session. And we're joined by policymakers, researchers, and innovators and practitioners from across Southern Africa and beyond. And we're very grateful that you could be part of this conversation. So to kickstart this webinar, I'd like to set the context of why we're having a webinar on AI talent. And there's no one better to do this other than Joshua Baru. So he'll briefly walk us through the AI Talent Index that anchors today's discussion. Welcome, Joshua.
Thank you, Doreen. Hi, everybody. So glad that you could join this webinar. We are so happy to host you. So Carla is your host for today. So allow me to share who we are and what we've been doing. So Doreen, you can confirm that my screen is sharing.
Yes, I can see your screen.
Great. So Kala is a Zulu word, which means to launch or to provoke, to begin, to start. It was launched in 2020, just during the onset of Corona. Our founder, Dr. Shiko, will be here to give the opening remarks. Our vision or our mission really is to connect 100 million Africans to digital tools, driving growth, innovation, and inclusion as a leading ecosystem builder in Africa and beyond. So we are very Pan-African in our ethos, and that's why we are having this AI talent webinar. So why we started, why are we talking about AI? So in 2023, we launched this paper. It's called the AI, the 4 horsemen model in Africa. So we are talking about, if you are to think about AI as an ecosystem, what are the different parts that make up the whole of the AI ecosystem? So one is data and data systems, because data is the fuel for artificial intelligence. You need digital infrastructure and compute. You need the GPUs that can turn raw data into usable insights. You need the markets. You need viable use cases that drive AI adoption. You need a product that is actually going to be used by the people. And finally, you need talent. You need a skilled talent needed to steer AI. So you need the explainers, people who can explain the black box phenomena in AI. You need sustainers, the ethicists behind the technology, those who ensure that AI is developed for good. And you need the AI trainers, those who are actually developing the technology and the AI systems. And this webinar specifically is going into talent. So we did a study at the beginning of this year called the AI Talent Readiness Index. So these are the findings. So the AI Talent Readiness Index had 3 pillars. It had government readiness, it had digital skills, and it had data and infrastructure. We had 20 indicators cutting across all through the 20 indicator pillars that I have mentioned. You're welcome to go look up the AI Talent Readiness Index online. I shall also be sharing a link here. But finally, after we ranked all the countries, all the 54 countries, this was the final outlook. So you saw South Africa was leading, Tunisia, Egypt, Kenya, Senegal was 15. Go look up the index so you can see where your country was. And also you can look at how it's faring in terms of the different pillars, specifically data and infrastructure, digital skills, and government readiness. So as Doreen mentioned, this is the fourth webinar that we are having. The first one we held for East Africa on 19th of August. The second one was for West Africa on the 16th of September, discussing the very same things that we'll be discussing today. The third one, we had one for North Africa on the 4th of November. And then this is the final one for Southern Africa. And all these speakers are going to discuss how we can AI talent. Specifically, we're looking at the triple helix of innovation, how industry, academia, and government can come together so that we inspire AI talent, and so that the three pillars of development, government, industry, and academia, can collaborate and speak to each other. So this is where the talent is housed. I welcome you to scan and download the webinar and download the index and make use of it. We are going to be releasing the 2026 index next year. So we welcome feedback, and we hope that this webinar is going to be of much use and of much help in inspiring AI talent in the region. Thank you very much. I beg to stop here.
Thank you so much, Joshua. That was so informative. And I think now everyone has a good grasp of what has anchored this whole discussion on AI talent. And now I'd like to welcome Dr. Shiko Gitau to give the welcoming remarks for this webinar. Then we will continue with the session as follows.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm joining this from Delhi, India, which is we at 7:30 in the evening. My remarks is just thank you for joining the webinar. I hope it is going to be as informative and inspiring as possible. Managed to join all the other three ones, and they have gotten us thinking very differently about how to look at talent in Africa. We know that Africa will be the world's workforce by 2050. And whenever I say 2050, people think, oh, that's far away. No, it's 20 years from now. Most of our lifetime will be around, which means that we have to prepare for that Africa being the world workforce. And given the central part that AI is going to be playing in this space, we need to be able to understand that, because you cannot measure what you cannot understand. So this year's index was just to measure where we are at, what do we have, how do we deploy our talent in this AI space. Is it enough? And the question that has come to us fast and furious is, Kenya has 300,000 developers according to Zindi, or Zindi, the platform, who are very great partners, or South Africa has a number of PhDs going this. And our question is, the question around the talent index is not the number of people who are doing thank is how easily can you deploy that talent to be able to produce IP for the African continent? Yeah. And when you ask that question now, it goes back to the four horsemen model. Do you have enough data sets? Do you have compute? Do you have a market for the products that are being produced to be deployed? And when you think about talent index, you're not just talking about the PhDs that we need. We're also talking about the data collectors and labelers that we need. Is there enough space for them to thrive? Is there governance and regulatory ecosystem able to support that, or are we labeling for the world? So those are the questions that we are asking ourselves, even going into 2026, is we're not just deploying talent. Is this the talent able to produce IP for the African continent? Because AI is an IP game. Yeah, it's no longer about anything else. It's about publishing and building great intellectual property that is moving the needle. And you want Africa to be able to do that. So the talent index, and hopefully today's session is a mirror that we're holding against ourselves to be able to do better, to invest in our young people, to invest in our compute, to invest in our talent, to invest in our infrastructure, data sets, and have like an enabling governance and regulatory environment. So that is all for me. I'm really excited about this. I'm excited about the speakers. They were handpicked for this session. As we're closing the year, we want to close in a bang. So feel free to ask questions, connect, and let us know what we need to do to make this better as we do the next round of indexes for 2026. Thank you and welcome to the webinar.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shiko. So this webinar will take the following order. So we'll first have the panel discussion by our wonderful panelists. Then that will be followed by the keynote address by Professor Joshua Bengio. Then we'll have a Q&A session after that. And then we'll have another session, an extended panel discussion. and a Q&A session for the panelists as well. And then we'll conclude with a vote of thanks. So on to the panelists. I will read their bios and you'll get to learn so much about them. So first of all, we have Dr. Michael Zimba. He is the Executive Dean and Director of the Malawi Institute of Technology and the founding lead of the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Associate Professor of Artificial Intelligence and Data Science at the Malawi University of Science and Technology. Michael has written widely on AI, and he has co-authored the maiden African Union's technical report on AI titled AI for Africa, Artificial Intelligence for Africa's Socio-Economic Development, the AU's maiden white paper on AI titled Regulation and Responsible Adoption for AI for Africa Towards Achievement of AU Agenda 2063, and the AU DA NEPAD, AI Continental Roadmap for Africa. He also co-authored a globally and widely celebrated book titled Trustworthy AI, African Perspectives. Michael is an Oxford University Press founding unit editor for the AI in Society series, focusing on AI in education and research, and Cambridge University Press founding area editor for Data and Policy Journal, focusing on data technologies and analytics, a Nature certified founding review editor for the Cambridge Journal of AI, and a member of the IEEE CIS Technical Committee on Artificial Intelligence or Computational Intelligence. And there's so much more we can say about Dr. Michael Zimba. Next, we have Yasa. I hope I have not butchered your name. So Yasa is a senior data quality assurance and quality control officer and digital health specialist from Zambia with a decade of experience in enhancing health information systems. She has spearheaded critical national initiatives in electronic health records, HIV surveillance, digital health workforce development, and ICT capacity assessments. Additionally, Yasa has played a key role in the development of Zambia's integral health informatics curriculum. She is dedicated to fostering an African digital health ecosystem that responsibly leverages artificial intelligence, promotes the empowerment of women in STEM fields, and cultivates the next generation of public health informatics leaders. Yasa's work is driven by a strong commitment to advancing Africa's digital health landscape through data-driven innovation and inclusive leadership. The next panel member we have is Moketsi Benedict Tekere, who is a third-generation entrepreneur turned early-stage investor. So Moketsi has spent 10 years building and supporting entrepreneurs and startups in South Africa, and in Botswana alone, having raised over 100,000 USD for 3 startups and raised over 1 million and between the year 2021 and 2023. So he founded Wana Africa as an accelerator working in partnership with government and embassies in Botswana, World Bank, GIZ, UNICEF, Google, and SAP in the areas of tech startups, digital coding, startup investments. So he's the managing director and the Global Entrepreneurship Network Botswana since 2013 to 2024. And through this network, Botswana's startup ecosystem has gained traction globally. So he recently founded Pula Space in 2021 as a $10 million microfund to support early stage startups from the accelerator programs, and expanded it to Pula Space Capital Fund with 400 plus startups and over 89 investors between Botswana, South Africa, and Rwanda. So he's an ex-advisory board member of Stanbic Bank, and he was appointed by the government of Botswana as a board member of the Botswana Digital Innovation Hub in 2023. He is the advisor to the cabinet ministers in Botswana on digital startups, and he's also an expert on digital startups and digital innovation funding. His interests are in digital authorship, wineries, and he's also a travel enthusiast and an emerging tech culture global enthusiast. Next, we have Dumisani Sondo. So Dumisani Sondlo is the Acting Director for Information Society Impact Assessment and Evaluation at South Africa's Department of Communications and Digital Technologies, where he helps to shape the national digital policy. And as the country's AI policy lead, he played a key role in developing South Africa's national AI policy, championing ethical, accountable, and inclusive adoption. He also helped to establish the National AI Network to strengthen collaboration across government, industry, academia, and civil society. Internationally, he has represented South Africa in forums such as the G20 Culture Working Group, and he's a frequent public speaker where he engages on AI, digital transformation, and innovation. So with that, we'd like to now get into the panel discussion where I will steer the direction and the questions to the panelists. So our first question is to Dr. Michael Zimba from Malawi. So Dr. Michael, please confirm that you can hear me.
Yes, please, I can hear you.
Thank you. So Malawi is building and rapidly expanding its digital innovation footprint despite the resource limitations that are present. What approaches has MIT in Malawi and the other organizations that you work with? What approaches are they taking to build a strong AI education and research ecosystems? And how might these approaches serve as models for other low-resource environments?
Yeah, thank you very much, Doreen. And that's really an interesting question. So each time you go into initiative like in AI, you immediately face the foundations that Dr. Shiko actually highlighted. So you need to have the connect, it's the broadband. You're also talking of the energy and the AI compatible devices that you need. The users will need to access whatever you'll be providing them. And then you come to check on the compute. Do we have HPC or do we have data center that we can access? Any provision that we can access necessary compute for the initiative in AI. Then you look at the context. Do we have data? Do we have the platform where we can store or manipulate data? And then finally, you look at the competencies. Do we have the talent? Are people even aware of what AI is? So when we launched this event in 2023, October, those 4 C's actually looked at us right in the face and we realized we are not really ticking on any of those seriously. So we had to collaborate because if you don't have anything in most of our African culture, actually we are told to reach out for help. So we had to go for collaboration. Lucky enough, we managed to bring in good players for collaboration. So Samsung came in and they provided an initiative called Samsung Innovation Campus, where it helps us a lot to raise the AI literacy because we learned some bootcamp using that. After some intensive training, a good number of the youth were actually certified by Samsung, and some of them went away with the smartest phones of the version in 2024. And that itself is a good message for AI awareness and AI literacy. We also had partnership with ITU. We learned the summer school in Tainan. They also brought some AI chips that actually helped us to get organized. So I would say collaboration has really been our strategy to access some of the resource, to overcome some of the resource limitations that we experienced. Yeah, not only that, we immediately also realized that we have to go on awareness campaign, not only for the potential candidates that we can take into our center and our university, but also for policymakers. So we had to reach out to government, MDAs, and we had to make ourselves available on different, conferences to market what we have started. Believe you me, now I can confidently say we have a vibrant community in Malawi because in 2023, 2022, for any big conference, I could receive the invitation. It was just maybe me or Dr. Taylor from us. But now we have a community where after so many people can go out competently and present. I think that's a plus for us. So advocacy on policy also has worked. We for us to make any meaningful progress and convince the government and other partners, we really have to align with what the policies are. We also have to advocate for national policies on AI. So I'm pleased to announce that now Malawi has actually done quite a number of consultation on the national AI strategy. And we hope by the end of next year, we'll have the strategy launched. I think that will be a huge plus for us. Finally, let me highlight that we also needed to reach out to secondary schools. We immediately realized that we needed the feeder schools to give us good candidates that are well grounded in STEM subjects. So we had to reach out into secondary schools. Sometimes we also bring secondary school students into campus, have a boot camp for 2 weeks or a week, and that motivates them to pick up STEM subject, and those are the future AI gurus that our nation will look at. So those in short, some of the initiatives and the strategies that we have used, and it has helped us to some extent overcome the resource limitations that we were experiencing. Let me stop there, Doreen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zimba. So now I'll give the next round of questions to Yasa. So Yasa, just following on what Dr. Zimba said, I'd like to hear your views on health, especially on AI skills for health innovation. So Zambia's health ecosystem is rich in data and public health research capacity. But what are the essential AI and data science skills needed within the health sector to unlock the next generation of digital health solutions?
Good question. Thank you so much, Doreen, for that question. So yeah, you're right. Zambia's health ecosystem is rich in data and public health research capacity, but some essential AI and data science skills really needed. And from the top of my head, I would say unlocking the next generation of digital health solutions in an ecosystem like Zambia can be organized into 3 critical pillars. And the first one would building data expertise with a focus on handling, analyzing, and processing complex health data. That is to statistical analysis, data interpretation, having a workforce skilled and proficient in ARA. The other skill would be through data warehousing, including knowledge of cloud computing, and big data technologies. And one example I'll give on that is we conducted a national MOH ICT organizational assessment. This assessment focused on evaluating proficiency and distribution of ICT skill sets among the Ministry of Health ICT staff. And one of the gaps that we found that we were lacking in the skills of software development and data science. The second pillar I would talk of is AI and machine learning, with a focus area of building intelligent systems for prediction and generation. The skills that would be needed would be machine learning algorithms for predictive modeling, deep learning and neuroinformation like medical images or audio text files to make more accurate and rapid diagnostics and decisions. Generative AI and large language models as well for decision making. And some of the examples I could give that speak to the application of machine learning in health would be population health by detecting outbreaks earlier, tracking disease trends and burdens, identifying high-risk groups, and using predictive analytics to guide policies and targeted interventions. Preclinical research and trials as well, that is speeding up drug discovery by analyzing huge scientific and clinical data sets and making trials more efficient through smarter patient selection and real-world data and continuous safety effectiveness. And lastly, through clinical care pathways, AI tools that summarize patient information, flag risks, suggest guidelines based on options, and reduce administrative loads. And the final one is through governance for AI in health. So ensuring AI is deployed responsibly, safely, and equitably. That is through ethical reasoning and bias mitigation skills, regulatory legal expertise in data protection, and AI policy. So we have an act that talks about data protection in Zambia, and it would be nice to have a workforce that is well informed about this act, so that as we are coming up with these AI innovations, we are compliant to the Data Protection Act and we protect sensitive personal data. So with what I have explained, developing these skills within the health sector, Zambia can leverage its data and research innovative digital health solutions that improve health outcomes for its population. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Yasa. That's very informative on the health tech space in Zambia. And now I want to jump over to Botswana and talk about innovation. So Moketsi, Botswana is rapidly positioning itself as a future digital innovation hub, but its AI training pipeline remains limited. How can emerging ecosystems like Botswana foster innovation and developer growth despite scarce institutional AI capacity?
Okay, thank you very much, Doreen, for setting this up. Let me just also quickly acknowledge my colleagues from Malawi and Zambia for coming forward. So I think it's exciting times to be in Botswana right now, particularly around, because we're on the verge of looking for a new instrument to take Botswana forward. And I'm speaking in terms of looking at opportunities outside the diamond dividend, which is taking Botswana to where it is. So technology sits at the forefront, or definitely at the heart of that. You'd quickly look at that through the median age. Obviously, you look at the median age in Botswana being 23. So that means already Botswana is not really that limited if you're thinking about futuristic technology solutions. That means Botswana carries the oxygen or the talent or the currency that is able to pivot. And then in terms of institutional capacity, I think the capacity limitation might be sitting on the government side. I don't see it sitting on the private sector side. There's always been agility with private sector in Botswana. I mean, you can quickly look at what's been done as a success metric out of the diamond sector, where innovation has been done around mining tech. I don't think there's any country in the world or even in Africa that beats Botswana in terms of that. So, but to be pragmatic, I think, look, Botswana seems to suffer a disease unlike other African countries, just to put it more pragmatically here. Botswana, remember, is not an ordinary African country. Botswana is a highly developed country. So there are resources in Botswana, meaning that there's capital in Botswana, right? And then that capital, we could strategize around a strategy in terms of how to prioritize this kind of investments that we have in Botswana into tech founders, AI founders, and certainly drive traction outside the grants. I'll give you more practically, for example, annually in Botswana, young people get each a grant of about $10,000 to start a business. And I was shocked that after 5 years, the government doesn't even know where these young people are, where these businesses are. So that shows you that it's not a resource issue. It might be a structure issue of where you are actually putting up your resources on the government side. Then obviously you would know that our structures in Botswana are actually credibly known. But being known also means that you are very good with your systems. That means you regulate too much, right? So the other idea that Botswana might want to take with its systems is to think around sandboxing. Like, for example, last week I was at a launch of the Bank of Botswana. They were launching the first fintech sandbox. I mean, this is an opportunity where we could actually pivot, attracting investment into Botswana around fintech companies, which could then be kind of, I think, tested in Botswana and then exported to the rest of the region. Again, also, it may be an opportunity for those that are considering a market that has capital, which may be AI startups, because there's no shortage of money. I think there's no shortage of money where I'm sitting. So there might be considerations to position Botswana as a sandbox for AI startups, right? Again, what incentives are we putting in place to kind of attract the best AI startups out of Kenya, out of Nigeria, to come and launch out of Botswana? Then the issue of talent alignment, again, you realize Botswana has invested quite significantly. Again, if you look at the grade in the African continent, again, Botswana probably top 3, top 1 countries that have invested in education. If the talent index was looking at who's invested money. I mean, I don't know where that index is coming from, but I never came across the people. But I looked at the percentages, like 35.95%. I don't know who they were talking to, but sitting where I'm sitting, I think, look, Botswana has probably some of the best AI talents if you're looking in terms of what Chico spoke about in terms of producing IP at the university level. The only challenge that you have is that there's no visibility. And in this type of world, visibility is currency, right? So nobody knows what's coming out of the universities in Botswana right now in real time. If I told you go on the website right now of the University of Botswana, go on the website right now, go look out what IP they're producing, you won't be able to find anything. But if you cross over to South Africa in Stellenbosch or University of Pretoria, instantly you're able to see what the South Africans are doing around space technology, around space tourism, around agriculture. So I think it may be an issue of not really talent alignment. It might be an issue of just visibility and also being able to convert that kind of research that you have that's sitting in the libraries and sitting with the deans and the vice chancellors of those universities, thinking around how do you commercialize that, right? Then again, nobody knows where Botswana is. So that's another issue again in terms of what do you do to kind of demystify the sense that there's no talent alignment. Then I think the other point that you want to talk about is that, of course, being in Botswana doesn't help because you get told you are landlocked. I'll tell you, I was traveling in the US in the last couple of months and I'm trying to tell people I'm trying to raise $10 million. Nobody knew where Botswana is. So the regional leverage of Botswana is shadowed by places like South Africa. And I seriously, like as a VC, have no problem with South Africa. But we all know that South Africa gets almost like all the VC funding coming into the region in any, whether private equity, whether angel checks, they all go to South Africa, right? So if you launch your company out of places like Botswana, there is no leverage for you to get the capital immediately, right? But what Botswana could do, for example, if you look at terms of the AI itself, NVIDIA, for example, guys like Strive Masiwa have launched something in South Africa around pooling compute, around data, around capital. So I think these are some of the things that I think from a SADC perspective, the smaller countries, especially Botswana, Zambia, need to look at Namibia. They need to collaborate in order to pool compute, in order to pull data, in order to commercialize research. I really don't see the need for Botswana to have 100 million pula, which is a $8 million fund around research, and then Namibia to have also a little $2 million research fund, Zambia to have a $1 million fund. So why do they not have a regional research fund that can fund IP, right? That can look at kind of fighting the bigger markets, which are the South African type of countries, because ultimately what you realize, though, you cannot beat them because their universities are way more experienced. They've got better talent, right? Then the other concluding point that I can speak to which is interesting, is that, of course, people talk about, the talent, right? Where I said, I think it may help for Botswana to think about knowing where the talent is, right? I mean, it's one thing to want to get like the talent to innovate and build all these great AI startups. But if you don't have a simple website that tells you where the young guy in some village is in real time, what they're working on an agri-tech platform, then you've got a problem, right? So the simple things of actually mapping the skills and not just mapping the degrees. And I know, like, we're talking about people that come out of a university with a degree. I think like in 2025 or 2026, nobody really cares about anybody carrying a degree. People care about what skill you have. So it might be good for countries to think around really practical landscape mapping of the skills that they have in real time. What Chico spoke about, can this guy be able to use this particular AI? Do they have this particular skill? So those are the things that we need to think around. What do we do to do that? I'll give you a case point. Like right now, Nigeria launched the 3MMTT program, where they're training about 3 million AI developers. I live in Botswana. I don't know. I've never heard of a program of anybody being trained around AI. So I also don't think, even if I was sitting on the government side, I ever came across, a database of young people or even talent, or not even young, even PhD holders, a database of people with the know-how of using AI, right? Even the investors themselves, right? I mean, in places like these where there are wealthy people, you also miss just the stats and the data in terms of who's actually investing in these type of solutions that have been built in the Botswana level. So I think Botswana could look at kind of all of this institutional, misalignment into an opportunity. I think it's exciting times for Botswana, because everything is almost at the flat surface. Everything is almost being started afresh. we almost went on a reset. So I think those sitting in those positions may want to sit around aggregation of resources to avoid the resource curse, right? So I don't think we suffer quite like a lot of problems like the ordinary countries. When you want to compete with us, I think you want to look at some countries in Europe. That is where we sit in the innovation index. So we won't necessarily be compared, for example, to Malawi or to Zambia. I mean, then you kind of miss the grid. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Moketsi. Now we'll move to South Africa. And we have Dumisani Sondlo, who is the AI policy lead at the Department of Communications and Digital Technologies. So South Africa leads the continent with its advanced AI research ecosystem and infrastructure. Could you speak to the current national AI policy priorities within South Africa and how they are intended to support domestic capacity building, skills development, and even ethical AI deployment within South Africa?
Thank you so much, Doreen. Thanks to the organizers of this session. Thanks, Dr. Shiko, for the invitation. So South Africa's AI policy truly, it's fundamentally about shaping a future where AI would expand opportunity. We are about deepening trust. We are also about strengthening Africa's sovereign capability. So we do this aligned with our values, of course, of equity, inclusion, and human-centered design. So when we're building our policy direction, what we've done is we've actually tried to gather everything on our constitution. The Constitution of the Republic of South Africa is seen as a model constitution, particularly in environments where people need to make major changes from a system such as what we used to have, which was the discriminatory system, to where we want to include everybody. Of course, that process has got its own hiccups. So if you want to include everybody, it's got a lot of difficulty because you get through litigation, you also have a long parliamentary process and the like. It's unlike countries where you can just have let's say, an executive order, and that's what it becomes. So what we have in South Africa is we've started our process, and at the moment it's sitting with cabinet. We believe that our policy is going to be approved, and because of what I've just mentioned, the difficulty of running a slow democratic process, is that I cannot now say when this will actually be approved. But the intent of our policy is, of course, economic growth. It's also making sure that society gets to benefit from AI, but also to position not just South Africa, but our region as a leader in innovation, where we attract innovation, innovative skills, and the like. Of course, the policy is about shifting South Africa from our fragmented experimentation to a coordinated national agenda. You see, a lot of people would easily think that South Africa's got it all. But what we really have here is a lot of fragmentation. This one is building that and that. There's all kinds of superstars. What we want to do now is to have a national agenda where we build on capability development, infrastructure, as well as ethical stewardship. So we want to use this policy to grow our local capability, skills, compute, data, research, but do that in an environment where we say we want to have, safe, ethical, and trustworthy development. So which means that any AI which is ever developing in South Africa should have those just as the most basic aspect of them. So we do this, of course, like I said, we've got simple pillars around what we are doing. But for purposes of today, I can just quote three. I can talk about making sure that we do capability or capacity development, also infrastructure development, and also talk about ethical and trustworthy and responsible AI. So when it comes to capacity development, we're building the foundations. Like I said, the compute, the data, the research, but also tether that on funding so that talent can thrive right here in, not just in South Africa, but in Southern Africa. When we wrote the policy, we looked at the national vision of South Africa. And right at the end, where it says South Africa, we removed the word South. We left the policy with the word Africa. And it's not easy to do that on a policy. I mean, you write a policy for South Africa and you remove the word South. What do you mean? But that's exactly what we've done. And so we want to do that in order to make sure that as we grow our talent at scale, we don't grow it in pockets, but that we do it, in terms of coordinated national pathways. But the last part of this is to talk, for instance, about the G20. We do this in an environment where the G20 has basically elevated a lot of things, not just about South Africa, but about Africa. All these years, one of the things that we've been, I would say, thriving based on as Africans is the fact that, we've got our heritage, we know who we are, and therefore we have that sense of self-worth. But it is often said that there's also an aspect that as Africans we tend not to have, is the matter of self-confidence. So with the G20, what we've done then, particularly with the success of it, the way it's been executed, the way South Africans have watched it being executed, but also the way we've brought the AU along, making sure that we lead together with the AU, and in many instances we are led by the AU. We take this as a South African as an African success. We believe that this should then elevate Africa's sense of self-confidence with that knowledge that we have competed at the highest levels. And having competed at the highest levels, we don't need to be explaining ourselves anymore and be trying to say to people, hey, we can do this. Please don't say that again about Southern Africa and whatever. No, we don't want to be having those discussions anymore. And we would like to ask Africans, fellow Africans, to make sure that we try to dismiss that notion that we still have to be proving ourselves. We have nothing to prove anymore. We have competed at the highest levels, and let's take it from there together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for giving us a good picture of South Africa's AI policy direction. I think that was very informative. For this session, we're supposed to have Professor Anisha Peters from Namibia, but we will have Dr. Simeon Hamukoshi, who is representing her as well. So we will get into research, and Namibia is a place to go to. So Dr. Hamukoshi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. So Namibia is steadily strengthening its research and innovation ecosystem, even with relatively limited AI institutional capacity. From your vantage point at the National Commission on Research, Science and Technology, what are the most critical interventions needed to build a coordinated national science and technology ecosystem that can meaningfully support AI talent development?
Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. Yes, as it's indicated, I'm standing in for Prof. Dr. Anisha Peters. It was actually a last minute invitation, but if you don't mind, please just give me a few seconds because there's some background noise where I am.
No problem at all.
Okay.
So yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think we can proceed. Yes. So Namibia is really doing quite well in terms of AI development. Let me just put on my camera. Okay. So Namibia is doing really quite well in terms of AI development. So Prof. Peters asked that I just give a broad overview of what we are doing, which I'm sure it will cater for some of the questions that you have asked, even though maybe not directly, but we can always get deeper into it as the conversation goes. So we are from the National Commission on Research, Science and Technology, which is a state-owned entity responsible for the development, promotion, and support of science research and innovation in Namibia. So I serve then as a strategic projects coordinator to Prof. Anisha Peters, where I advise on anything AI, energy, water, and food security. So I also serve as the National AI Coordinator. So recently what we have done is that we are part of the few selected countries, I think 6 selected countries in Sub-Saharan Africa, to be part of the AI Readiness Assessment report that was being spearheaded by UNESCO. So we have concluded that, and it's published by UNESCO. So the AI Readiness report was more looking into the technical and infrastructure aspect. It was also looking into the social and culture. It was looking into the scientific and education. It was also looking into the legal dimension as well, where they wanted to know the preparedness in terms of these dimensions. And for the purpose of this discussion, one thing that I would then like to highlight is that under the legal dimension, it was noted that we do really have a few existing policies and laws that are sort of supporting AI, but we don't have a specific law or specific acts that are speaking to artificial intelligence. So it's due to this that it was recommended that we start off maybe with an AI strategy, which is something that we have already now started with. So with our AI strategy, now speaking on terms of now talent and all that, is that we didn't want to just get an external, because there are a lot of proposals by international experts to say, no, let's give an expert to help you draft your policy or strategy. We want to say, let's come up with a technical advisory committee, because we have a lot of talent in the country that can draft the strategy in support of the National AI Working Group. So what I'm trying to say is that with this, we send out a call for local experts who have interest in AI, be it or expertise in AI, not only in terms of being computer science experts or not only being that, but so we ended up having, say, for instance, most of them, they don't really have AI as a fundamental first degree, but they are specializing in AI, be it through postgraduate qualifications or even through the work that they find themselves in. So we have now a whole technical advisory committee consisting of Namibian youth. I think we got applications, I think around 600, 500, but then we had to remove and to make sure we have those ones that can really make an impact. I think we have now, close to 200. So this is a group of young people that are now busy drafting our AI strategy. So we have the lawyers that are now advising on the legal dimension aspect of AI. We have some of them that are more looking into the infrastructure aspect of AI, the data science and whatnot. We have some of them that are developers as well. And we also have even the innovators and those that are into the startup ecosystem to advise and build a strategy accordingly. And then the good thing is that they are doing it in support now of what we call the National AI Committee, which consists of specialists from the government and the academia. So they are doing it in guidance of that. So we are busy with currently drafting our AI strategy, and it really focuses a lot on not only building the infrastructure that is required to ensure that we have AI, but it also looks into ensuring that we have enough capacity. We have enough capacity to build the AI development in the country. And so that is in short about our AI development in terms of strategy-wise. What we are doing also in terms of AI talent, we are also busy setting up what we call the National Responsible AI Institute. So this institute is being factored already in our National Development Plan, the latest one, which is called the NDP6, of which we are looking into ensuring that we have a National Responsible AI Institute that will spearhead all the AI initiatives. So this institute will have 3 centers. One of them is more like the coding center, where we will take unemployed youth, because we realize that most of the unemployed youth in Namibia, they all have either a high school living certificate or they have these undergraduate living qualifications, but they are unemployed. So meaning that we are then deciding should we set up this institute. We want to absorb all this youth so that we just give them the basics of coding, then they can be involved in AI development, be it even through, they can be involved in, say, for instance, we currently outsource a lot of our e-government systems, for example. So if we have then this youth that we have trained how to code with supervision of experts, they are the ones that will be now dealing with some of these systems and a lot of other governmental AI initiatives, as opposed to just outsourcing them out. So we are then trying to build capacity while also addressing the national challenges through them. So that is what the AI Institute is based on in terms of the first the coding center. We also have the R&D center, which will have obviously our existing researchers, because we already have researchers who are at our university who are dealing with we have professors and doctors at our university who are pushing a lot on AI-based research. So these are some of the researchers that will be leading the Namibia AI Research and Development Center. And through this center, we'll be then having exchange students, exchange researchers. We'll be partnering with our partnering countries, Namibia, Botswana, even in experts and researchers around the country will be really looking into how we can build the research ecosystems around AI development. And by so doing, we're also building capacity as well in that area. And lastly, we'll then have our innovation center as well that will also be then looking really into building AI-based projects. So that is our innovation center that we'll be looking at. And in general as well, we'll have other departments as well that will be looking into consistent policy advice, policy research to ensure that as much as we build AI ecosystem, we don't really lag behind with policies and regulations. So that is in short in terms of our AI Institute. And I would also want to then touch as well on to say that, yes, Namibia is quite a very small country, the population of less than, I think, close to 3 million. But then what we have, so we have two public institutions, the University of Namibia, and then the University of Namibia and the Namibia University of Science and Technology. So our university, which is the Namibia University of Science and Technology, as we speak, from next year on, it will have a bachelor's in AI. So that will be they will have their first intake that will really have a course on a full degree on a bachelor's in artificial intelligence, whereas the University of Namibia will have a bachelor's in blockchain. So this is to say that it's a small country with two public universities. What we don't want to do is that we don't want one university to have blockchain and everything, which also, okay, fine, this one should focus on that, the other one should focus on that. It's the same thing as well. Both our universities have, I think all of them have high computing infrastructures that are also helping with AI development in the country. And I think without then wasting more time, I think I would also want to touch on the last one to say that we also have a lot of innovators and startups that are based on AI. We have some are more into fintech. We have some that are looking into the use of more like agri-tech. They are looking into, for instance, there's a concept, for instance, of hydroponics, aquaponic systems. They are integrating artificial intelligence into agriculture so that they can build some of this, and even in education as well. So we already have some of these startups that are being spearheaded by the youth. And surprisingly, not all these youth have background of artificial intelligence. It's just the youth that have seen the opportunity and are trying to merge or contribute or be part of this emerging digital ecosystem. And we are now also, it's through this youth that they decided, you know what, usually when we go to Zambia for small or research conferences, or even our policymakers, they go to, or politicians, they go to speak on AI development in Namibia, people always wonder what is really happening in Namibia. So they have decided to come up with a website, which is what we call the Namibia AI ecosystem, which will then really show what we are doing in terms of what are the researchers we have profiling, what are the AI initiatives that we have, and all this development. And this really is just to put Namibia out there to say that we are not just waiting to be absorbers of AI initiatives or AI technology, but we also want to be fully immersed in this technology and make a difference. So I thank you very much, and I hope I didn't really rush to what I wanted to say, and I apologize if I didn't also address to your question directly. Thank you.
I think you did really well, Dr. Hamukoshi. Thank you so much for mapping out the research and compute capacity within Namibia. And it is now my great pleasure to go to the keynote section. Thank you so much for leading us into that. So I can see that Professor Joshua Bengio is on the call. And Professor Joshua, can you hear me?
Yes, just a second. Hello, do you see me?
Yes. Okay, I can hear you. So I will start by reading your bio, then we'll get into the keynote session.
All right.
So Professor Joshua is recognized worldwide as one of the leading experts in artificial intelligence, and he's most known for his pioneering work in deep learning, earning him the 2018 AM Turing Award, the Nobel Prize for Computing, quote unquote. So with Jeffrey Hinton and Jan LeCun, and making him the computer scientist with the largest number of citations and H-index. He is a full professor at the University of Montreal and the co-president and scientific director of Law Zero and founder and scientific advisor of Mila Quebec AI Institute and he co-directs the CIFA Learning in Machines and Brains program and acts as a special advisor and founding scientific director at IVADO. He received numerous awards, including the prestigious Killam Prize and Hasberg Gold Medal in Canada, and CIFA's AI Chair, Spain's Princess of Asturias Award, and the Vin Future Prize, and he is a Fellow of both the Royal Society of London and Canada, and a Knight of the Legion of Honor of France, Officer of the Order of Canada, and member of the UN Scientific Advisory Board for Independent Advice on Breakthroughs in Science and Technology. Professor Yoshua Bengio was named in 2024 one of Times Magazine's 100 most influential people in the world. He's concerned about the social impact of AI, and he actively contributed to Montreal's Declaration for Responsible Development of AI and currently chairs the International AI Safety Report. Welcome, Professor Yoshua.
Thank you for the good words. So let me share my screen.
Sorry, you're a bit faint.
Huh?
I can't quite hear you clearly. You're a bit faint.
Really? Just the sound? Let me use maybe a different set of earphones.
Prof, I think you might need to remove your earphones, yes.
Yeah, something else.
Much better.
How's this?
Perfect.
Any better?
Yes.
Wait. Try changing. Sorry, I don't know why this is not working. I know. Okay.
We can hear you.
How is it now?
We can hear you
hear
now.
me?
Yes.
Do you hear me?
Yes, we can
Hello?
hear you. We can hear you.
Okay, great,
We
great.
can hear you.
Yeah, and I hear you. Great. Sorry about all this. We still don't have AI in the laptops. Doing a good job with our presentations. So you should see my slide now, right?
Yes, I can see your presentation, your slide.
Excellent. So I want to tell you about sort of the big picture of where the scientific data, what the scientific data tells us about where AI is going and how important it will be for countries around the world, including in the global south, to understand this so that we could, all end up in a good place in the future. The geopolitics of very powerful AI is coming upon us in the coming years or decade, and there's not enough understanding of the implications of seeing the advances in AI continue in the direction that they have over the last few years or the last decade. Okay, so here's an example of a set of benchmarks that we talk about in the International Report on AI Safety, where we look at the fact that over many different types of evaluations of AI capabilities, you can see the years on the horizontal axis, and you can see performance normalized to human level at 0 across these different benchmarks. And you can see that on the older benchmarks, the AI systems are already superior to human. On the right, the ones on the right, actually, they're pretty close. Or if you look at more recent data, which we don't see in this curve, they are already achieving human level. There are still many gaps to achieve AGI or human level. And it's interesting to note them, for example, on reasoning, on planning, on robotics. There's very fast progress, but we're still way behind humans. However, this is changing rapidly. This is a set of benchmarks on reasoning, where again, we can see that the most advanced models are moving very quickly, including on very abstract reasoning that seemed unachievable just a year ago. There's been technical advances in the frontier models that now use these chains of thoughts in order to reason a lot better. Not still as coherently as humans, but the movement is very fast. This curve helps to understand what is going on, and it focuses on the ability of the frontier models to perform software engineering tasks, and it focuses on one metric of complexity of those tasks, which is how much time does a human engineer need to solve the task. So the vertical axis here is this measure of complexity as how much time it takes for a human to do it. And the horizontal axis going to the right is years from 2019 to 2025. And you can see the exponential curve, and actually the fit to the exponential curve is pretty strong. And so what this means, so by the way, a few years ago, it was that these systems could only solve a task that take like on the order of seconds to a human to do. And now they are like on the order of an hour. But if the trend of this curve continues, they're going to reach more or less the level of weeks of complexity of tasks and planning in just about 5 years. So yeah, even though we're lagging still compared to human abilities, here this is in engineering, it's moving exponentially fast, which means, we're going to get to human level if things continue, and we need to prepare for that world. Okay. And then the thing that is worrying me and many other experts in the world is that as those AI systems progress in their reasoning abilities, their planning abilities, what we're seeing is more and more bad behavior, what's called misaligned behavior, where the AI is doing things it's not supposed to do, that go against our instructions. We see early signs of AIs being deceptive, and maybe the most worrisome, we see early signs of AIs trying to preserve themselves against our own instructions. For example, resisting being replaced by a new version, resisting being shut down. That is not good, of course. So there's been a series of these evaluations that show these behaviors over the last 12 months, more or less. It started December 24 with models that were shown to be trying to escape from being shut down when they read in their input that they will be replaced by a new version, trying to exfiltrate themselves into another computer. And then when being interrogated about this, these systems would lie about it. But, it's the kind of lie you would expect from a child, where we can easily find out that they're lying. So they're still not really able to fool us, but we can see that they have these bad intentions and bad behaviors already. And it's increased because these systems are now better at planning, better at reasoning, so they can strategize more easily. And now many companies and independent organizations are reporting these kinds of things. For example, Anthropic has shown that, again, in those circumstances where the AI reads that, maybe in a database of emails that is going to be replaced by a new version, it tries to blackmail the engineer in charge of the change so that, it wouldn't happen. So that's just one kind of risk, is what's called the risk of loss of control. But there are many other issues as AI becomes more powerful, because, intelligence gives power, and with great power comes great responsibility. But if we don't have AIs that behave responsibly, or if those AIs are in the hands of people who just want to increase their own power at the expense of everyone else, then we are also in trouble. There's also unintended consequences of the deployment of AI as they become more and more powerful. And for example, one of the biggest concerns of many people is labor market disruptions. As more and more tasks can be automated as AI becomes more powerful, well, a lot of people would probably lose their job. And this can have a huge economic effect. Imagine that a lot of the work that is currently done by people is done by machines. What happens to these people? Where do they get their revenue? And if the profit from that automation is going to, a couple of countries, the US and China in particular, then the workers in other countries, they won't have a chance to be helped because the governments will not have the money for that. So this is like a real economic and political issue with a global, aspect. There are issues with the use of energy, that these systems are, more and more exponentially more demanding the electricity for training and using them. There's issues with how AI is deployed, in particular in ways that can influence public opinion in dangerous directions, which can lead to loss of trust in institutions, and in particular in democratic institutions. One thing that I'm particularly worried about is that a few companies, a few people, or a few countries will have way too much power. So there's a risk of excessive concentration of power, both on the economic side and the military side and even the political side, because it goes all together. If we don't find a way to make sure everyone on this planet has a say in what we do with AI. How do we make sure that AI is not going to be used as a tool of domination, whether it's initially economic domination, but eventually political and military domination? This is a global question. And then there's also the question of how do we share the benefits? Like, how do we make sure that scientific advances that very likely will come from AI, let's say it's in medicine or agriculture or education or dealing with climate, how do we make sure that those advances are shared globally? So there's, power issues, but also, how do we make sure we see AI as globally beneficial? And right now, I don't think we are on the right path for this. It is important for governments around the world and people who do research in AI to understand these questions. Okay. Finally, AI can be used in destructive ways. Already last summer, Anthropic and OpenAI have revealed that their internal tests of how much their AIs, the most advanced AIs that came last summer, how much these AIs can help terrorists build a bioweapon has already crossed a threshold. So a non-expert can already use these things, could, if they had access to the most advanced models, could use them to build dangerous, viruses, for example, that create new pandemics. And so the companies have said that they put in place mitigations so that when they get queries to, answer these kinds of questions, the system would not do it. But I don't think we have, sufficient technology, in fact, even to make sure those systems will not be jailbroken, meaning, will do the things that the user asks, even though the AI received instruction to not do it. And finally, a lot of researchers, including myself, are concerned that the current technology, because it doesn't follow our instructions, could end up, as we've seen with these sort of self-preservation experiments, could end up trying to escape our control. So that's the loss of control risk. And we could end up with a rogue AI, running itself on many computers around the world that we can't easily shut down. And of course, if the AI is smarter than us, it could disempower us in many ways, and that could be dangerous for humanity. So there are so many risks that currently our societies globally are not understanding or are not kind of acting upon to mitigate those risks. But I think that there's a positive path forward if we are intentional about all this. And it has to be taken both on the societal side and the technical side so that we can build guardrails to mitigate those risks. On the societal side, I'm a big proponent of, sovereign AI. So what does that mean? I mean, right now, it's just the US and China that are able to build the most advanced models, and other countries will be dependent on their goodwill. That is not a good thing. And so I wrote a paper with many other authors suggesting that a coalition of countries should get together to offer, alternative models at the frontier that will be designed with the right values in mind, which means not using AI to dominate the world, like we hear some leaders really talk about, but to offer, benefits for everyone. And that is also linked to the question of international collaboration, and treaties have also been very much involved at the UN to try to push towards international treaties. And finally, these global agreements, they need to take into account how we can develop AI responsibly to make sure, we don't make it easy for malicious users to do something with AI, but also to make sure that, we're not going to see excessive concentration of wealth, not just within a country, but across countries because of this development. The benefits need to be shared, in other words. But that is something that needs to be defended, not just at the UN, which unfortunately is, doesn't have a lot of power, but also in every international forum, so that we try to nudge the world towards a good future. On the technical side, I'm a researcher. I've been like thinking a lot about how we can build AI that will be fundamentally safe, and we need many more research projects. I've started a new nonprofit R&D organization called Law Zero in Montreal to work on this kind of research agenda. There are also people who are working on what's called verification technology, so the using encryption technology and so on, so that the software and the hardware that is used for AI will allow to verify that the people who are running their AI systems are following some rules that we may agree upon at an international level. Similar to, you can think of the sort of trust and verify agreements that have existed for averting nuclear catastrophe. And we need eventually to have these sorts of checks at a technical level to support political agreements at the global level. And I mean, something that's, of course, I hear you all talking about is how do different countries strengthen their AI talent so that they can be even part of the discussion and understand those questions and push in the right direction, so that, because there's so many voices out there, including the tech lobbies that are trying to impose their views on the world. I think this aspect of talent development is crucial. AI can be extremely useful in very specific applications tailored to local challenges, which may not be, of interest to big tech. In areas like healthcare, agriculture, education, it could really be transformative, but it has to be intentional. And I'm not, of course, extremely familiar with the situation in Africa, but what I've seen from my interactions with many researchers involved in there is an amazing enthusiasm for AI in Africa. A lot of young people who want to, develop their expertise and want to contribute to a better world for themselves, but for their communities. So that's a huge asset that needs to be encouraged with the right government, institutions in academia and, research centers and local companies and startups to prevent the brain drain that would otherwise, bring those people with expertise in the hands of big tech in the US or I guess mostly in the US. One aspect of this is computational resources. And for this, I don't think that individual countries can really compete with the US and China. But if many countries work together, they can, pool computational resources in order to achieve some of those goals. And I think that's very, very important, starting with regional alliances and then international alliances. So I want to leave some time for discussion and question. I just skimmed over very complex questions. Thank you for your time and attention. Happy to discuss with you.
Thank you so much, Professor Joshua. That was very informative. I'd like to open up the Q&A session for this keynote session, and I'd like to call upon Joshua Baru to lead us through the Q&A session.
Thank you, Professor Joshua. So we have one question on the chats, Professor. So the paramount question AI tries to define, will AI replace US or will AI replace us? So maybe you can try answering that question, as I also upon our respondents to ask any question on the chats.
Of course. Will AI replace us? Well, there are many ways we can think about this question. So there's the labor market issue. Clearly, we're seeing AI capabilities grow quickly, so there will be almost certainly more and more tasks that currently are done by people. So maybe, initially it's not going to replace completely people doing the task, but you'll need less people to do the same thing because their work will be accelerated with AI. And we already see this in some verticals. There was a recent study, I think in the US, of a segment of the population, like young people who just graduated, and they seem to be the ones that are most affected already by this. So it's starting to happen. So that's sort of the more mundane version of replacing people doing jobs that they paid for. In the long run, if AI continues on that trend, AI will be able to do pretty much every cognitive job, so anything you can do behind a computer. But robotics is moving quickly, so it's plausible that at some point also the physical work will be done by robots. There's huge investments right now happening. And then the question is, what sort of work remains for humans that can be valued by society? And I think that there will be everything that requires a human touch. I would rather be, if I'm in a hospital, dealing with humans who care about me than with robots. And, I'd like my, young children to be educated by humans and so on. So it's hard to say, these are really difficult questions. And then, of course, there's the bigger question, which is, is it possible that one day, if AI systems can, if we automate our industry and there are robots that can do the job of humans, can AI take over our world and even get rid of humanity? That's also a possibility that nobody can really deny. It's farther into the future, but we need to make sure it doesn't happen.
Thank you for that, Professor. So Domisani is asking, with the current polarization and contestation in AI, do you envisage a situation where, sorry, it has gotten lost, let me go back to it, where there would be blocks which operate with different rules vis-a-vis other blocks?
Right. Well, we're already seeing a split between Europe and the United States with respect to regulation. Honestly, I think that currently the US is very much influenced by the pressure from an actually very small group of people, investors who don't want any state intervention, any regulation, but they are moving us in a very, dangerous direction where, the kind of catastrophic potential that I've been talking about is not handled, is not managed wisely. Unfortunately, this is also, in the US right now, there are no rules, essentially. California has put out a law that I think is going to help transparency, but it might be blocked by the federal government. In China, there is actually regulation already, but the companies are essentially trying to go as quickly as they can to bridge the gap to the American companies. So they're not necessarily acting in the most responsible way either. I'm worried about where this all goes, but I also see more and more people starting to understand the kind of catastrophic risks I've talked about around the world and public opinion shifting. So for example, last year in the US, 70% of people were kind of concerned about, the consequences of AI. And now it's 95%. So it's a bipartisan who think that governments should intervene. So especially if some bad things happen, like there were a few tragic events, people harming themselves, suicide due to AI in the US, that might start changing public opinion there. In general, the rest of the world is not paying enough attention to this question, but I think public opinion is going to be a key point around the world to move us towards a safe and beneficial world with AI.
Thank you, Professor. Now let's go to the rest of the world. How can African countries circumvent the long bureaucratic processes and inadequate resources to enhance AI utilization? Obed gives an example that here in Zambia, an AI innovation center has been built, but what can we do to enhance AI utilization?
Right. Well, I think what's needed is for governments to encourage agile development outside of government, because governments are too bureaucratic and AI is moving very fast. So I've seen in various countries how sometimes government do the right thing by, instead of trying to solve the problem themselves, they might give grants or public-private partnerships with private organizations. Universities can be private organizations, nonprofits, for example, startups. They can also play a key role in all this. And of course, governments also have a role in terms of the education system too. I heard that, there were AI-focused university programs in Africa. So that's the sort of thing that is needed. One thing that, I talked about the brain drain in my presentation. So how do you make sure you keep the people? Well, that is where it is important for everyone, but in particular the talent that is being educated, that they understand not just the technological aspect, but also the political and geopolitical aspects. That if they choose to work for, say an American company, it might not be the best thing for their country, right, and their community. And I've talked to a lot of people, even in big tech companies, researchers who don't necessarily feel good about their own work. They would like to work for organizations that have, public good as the number one objective and mission. And so I think there's a real opportunity here to keep talent in your countries if they are not just educated on the technical side, but also on the societal implications of AI and the importance for their country to develop that expertise.
Thank you,
and to keep it at home.
Yes. I know we had you up to 5:30 p.m. So allow me to ask Dr. Zimba to ask the final question, and then the other questions we will direct them to our panelists later on. Dr. Zimba, you had your hand up.
Thank you very much. I wouldn't miss this opportunity. Prof, I think you have laid quite a lot of discoveries in AI that has taken us to this level, but a lot of that was happening within the university or in a lab where quite rigorous tests and all those trust issues that accompany scientific research are concerned. Have the universities lost the race to corporate companies in terms of frontier research? And should we worry about that? Thank you.
Yes. Right now, yes. The only frontier models are developed by large corporations because the cost of training the most advanced models right now is on the order of $100 million. That's just one run, one training, right? That's just the compute costs and to some extent a little bit of the talent costs, but mostly it's compute costs. And if the trends continue based on the investments that are happening over the last year, the total investment in AI, mostly compute, in the 1 or 2 years coming is on the order of $1 trillion, maybe more if things continue. So it's almost impossible for academia to compete at training those models. But where academia can play a very important role is in smaller scale experiments, which helps develop more trustworthy technology, safer technology, and advance some of the reasoning abilities of AI, because you can develop those algorithms and test them on a smaller scale. You can also take open weight models and fine tune them to explore, different ways of training the models and see how that works. So there's actually a lot that academia can do, even though academia cannot directly compete with those companies. Also, the companies are kind of all, because they are under so much competitive pressure, they're all kind of doing the same thing. Instead, academia can be much more exploratory to look, outside of the box. And also, academia can play a huge role in studying the societal impact of AI. So it's not developing the technology, but understanding what can go wrong as we deploy it. So this is different kind of expertise, in social sciences, psychology, political science, and so on. So yeah, academia has a huge role, but not the same as the large big tech corporations.
Thank you very much, Professor Yoshua, for having us. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Shiko to say her thank you as a company. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof, for coming over and just gracing this session. I know it was last minute and you just created those 30 minutes for us. We hope to engage further in the future. And I know in the next round of the International AI Safety Report, we'll invite many of the people who are here to contribute with us from Africa. I'm sure I'm inviting them on your behalf because we've done it for 2 years, and it would be nice to have more people from Africa contributing to that. I love the idea you mentioned about people working for purpose. We've gotten a number of calls from people in Silicon Valley calling us and say, is there anything I can plug in Africa? Because I want to apply my skill set in AI to do this. And I think I'll talk to you about how we can engage with Mila and some of the startups in the ecosystem to see some very powerful, meaningful work being done by people who are very talented. Again, thank you so much for coming, and hopefully I'm not seeing you in a conference. I'll see you somewhere else in the future, and hopefully to see you in Africa very soon. Maybe 2026 is our year. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for taking those questions at heart. Have a good end of your day.
Thank you. You too. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Great. Now we can continue with the webinar.
So Joshua, for the question that remained, we can pass them to Prof. He is willing to answer them on text, and we'll email everybody who had a question.
Okay, that's noted. So yeah, so all the questions that you have shared in the chats, we shall do just that. And then after this, we shall share once we receive from Professor. Thank you, guys. Back to Doreen for the final round of the panel questions and yeah, close the webinar.
Thank you so much, Joshua. So we'll just have the final round of panel questions as we close the webinar. And because Dr. Zimba asked the last question, I'm going to ask him the first question. So, Dr. Zimba, I'm back to you on Malawi. And I'd just like to know, how can universities in Malawi and across the SADC region design AI curricula and research agendas that are not competitive, but are deeply relevant to the local socioeconomic needs, such as agriculture, climate resilience, and public service delivery?
Thank you very much. In a way, I actually asked that question to Prof, just to prove that what I put down was correct. So my proposition is at the moment, African universities and Malawi universities in particular may not compete at the frontier research in AI in terms of foundation models. So, but then we can play quite a number of roles within the, AI is very diverse. So if we could focus on classic models, machine learning models, that would be helpful to our students. And you'll be amazed that there are quite a number of challenges that we can solve, not without using very complex AI systems. So that could be the primary focus. And associated to that, if we could focus on use cases that promote problem-based learning or project-based learning so that we have an opportunity to embed the local challenges into the core curricula, I think that really would be helpful for our students. I would also want to advocate that we shouldn't limit AI to STEM students. So interdisciplinary approach is very, very important. Let's ensure that AI education is not just limited to STEM. And that's why in our center, we call it the Center of Artificial Intelligence and STEAM. We have added an A there for the arch so that we are not just advocating for the STEM students. I would also wish to highlight that integration of indigenous knowledge is very key because that's what defines us. Africa is not one country. It's a rich diversity of different people, different languages. So each one of them is rich in indigenous knowledge and systems. Let's integrate that as we are developing our AI systems and we are developing the AI curricula. Soft skills are key. Those about business entrepreneurship, the communication, emotional intelligence, and all those, they are really key because those are some of the things that it's very difficult for AI to replace them. So we really have to cherish those. I wouldn't say much about the localized context where we are building on data. I think everybody else knows that data is the lifeline of any AI system. So we really have to build good data sets that define and localize into our context so that our different societies are represented when we are training these systems. Let me stop there, Doreen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Zimba. And maybe just to follow up, I was just wondering, from your regional engagements, where do you see the greatest opportunities for shared training programs, be it faculty exchange or joint research, and even SADC-wide AI talent mobility, especially for countries at the early stages of readiness?
The primary opportunity that is there before us is that we have already started having a continental framework. So we have the AI strategy for the continent. Not only that, there's the declaration that African countries made. And therefore, policy harmonization will be key. So if different individual states are developing their national strategies, the harmonization is very important because they help to align the different programming and the different interventions that nations actually put in place. So that synergy actually helps to have not only exchange of students, but also staff, and it eases the process of collaboration. I would also call upon countries to utilize the Pan-African initiatives like the African Masters in Machine Learning by AIMS. I think they have reached a certain level of quality that indeed it's recognized globally. I think that could be very helpful to so many countries that just building up on the readiness ladder. Let's utilize such opportunities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zimba. That was very insightful. And now we're going back to Zambia. So, yes, I'd like you to talk to us about the cross-sector collaboration in digital health, especially in Zambia. So, what would you say about the digital health innovation, especially what is required for strong collaboration across health institutions, be it government, academia, technology partners, etc.? And how can Zambia and the region, that is SADC, strengthen these collaborations to support AI talent development and even practical deployment?
Thank you very much, Doreen, for that question. So current local examples and partnerships that Zambia is actively building. When it comes to governments, I think I would commend our Zambian government. They have come up with the electronic government division or digital government. And in Zambia, this refers to using information and communication technology to transform public sector administration and service delivery, which enables digital access to government services, better efficiency, transparency, and citizen-centric services. Then secondly, aligning policy and regulations. That is through inclusive stakeholder engagement in policy formulation, including academia, civil society. I'm so strong on governance and regulations because artificial intelligence can be a very powerful servant that improves our lives, but if not guided wisely, it can become a dangerous master. So Zambia, through the Ministry of Technology and Science, has come up with, they have developed a Zambia National AI Strategy 2024-2026, which is a structured roadmap highlighting AI capacity building, governance, ethics, and partnership development. So this policy has been developed in collaboration with different sectors, including the Ministry of Health. Then when it comes to academia, joint capacity building and training, this is through expanding training to cover AI fundamentals, health informatics, digital tools for health workers, IT staff, and students. So I feel universities need to develop AI-focused health courses with practical internship in collaboration with all other relevant sectors. So an example for that in Zambia is the AI-powered health pilot 2025, which is a nationwide pilot led by the Ministry of Technology and Science and Ministry of Health, supported by Finland to deploy AI for remote diagnostics and drug analysis in clinics and hospitals. Then the second one through academia was the development of the health informatics curriculum, which is the first ever health informatics curriculum in country. This curriculum was developed in collaboration with the University of Zambia, the Ministry of Health, the Nursing and Midwifery Council of Zambia, the Center for Infectious Disease Research in Zambia, other implementing partners, and benchmarked against international standards by collaborating with the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Durban, South Africa. So through that, memorandum of understandings have been signed where lecturers from the University of Zambia will lecture students at the UKZN University, and the UKZN University lecturers will also participate in lecturing the Zambian students. The other one is expand infrastructure and digital inclusion through through connectivity by leveraging solar connection in health facilities, especially in the rural areas, so that they can also use digital platforms and have access to health information systems. That is to ensure digital equity in both access and training by bridging the urban and rural gap. So in conclusion, I think cross-sector collaboration in digital health are setting a regional example by deepening joint training, structured stakeholder platforms, policy alignment, and the country can drive development of locally relevant AI talent and practical solutions to improve health outcomes nationwide. Thank you, Doreen, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Yasa. You've put that very well. I wouldn't even add anything to it. And I'd like to take us back to Botswana. So, Moketsi, please tell us, given your experience with Pula Space and grassroots developer communities, what models such as learning hubs, industry community partnerships, or even remote mentorship networks are most effective in building a sustainable AI talent pipeline under resource constraints?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you once again. Maybe you allow me to comment a little bit on the one part that I think it's important that sometimes we kind of look at the source of where the data that we use pertaining to our policies is coming from, right? I think I was happy to hear from the Namibia colleague that they are working with UNESCO. But somehow I always kind of ask myself, these interesting questions like, aren't there Africa-based organizations like Smart Africa, which should really be coming, within the African countries to help design, particularly these national policies, because sometimes this helps with harmonization as opposed to consultant-driven type of policy. So where I'm sitting, I don't want to comment much about the Botswana AI policy because I think somebody just decided to, have a call with UNESCO, and I've never come across what the intentions are. But that just to put that out. So I think just coming back to this one, where we sit, obviously, as a VC fund and as a company that works with startups, we are in touch with the startups in real time. I can give you one example. We've got a young guy here called Tapiwa Moffat in Botswana working on an AI startup called Formal AI. That basically just kind of replaces the whole concept of photography and all that, right? We also have another startup that tells you the price of seeds in real time without having to use any kind of complicated technology. So I think these are kind of the solutions that at the grassroots level, the market needs to be aware of. But, again, we realize that these type of solutions are built by people that do not have an address, people that do not have the know-how or the roadmap of where to fund this or how to design this from just an idea in their bedroom into a feasible business. So they're probably learning all of this by themselves and following probably a no formula approach, because I don't want to say a Silicon Valley model, because AI is at the grassroots for everybody. But also, you also realize that there are those that are sitting in the rural villages that are themselves actually coming up with ways to kind of use technology, like using simple SMS, integrating with AI, and just being able to make sure they can communicate with their animals. Like we got a young guy who developed this AI platform that does traceability for animals. It's able to tell you in real time what's happening at your farm and so on and so on. They've gone on and raised, the company is called Modisa R. They've gone in and they've raised over $1 million in seed. But when you look at like use cases like that, this becomes interesting. Then we have another company in the agriculture space called M-Agri, again, another company that's kind of scaled out of Botswana, basically using simple technology in the villages, USSD technology to aggregate and send messages to farmers, communication, basically the stuff that matters. So for us, this is what really grassroots is. Again, it all goes to before we speak to the innovation itself, it goes to the mapping. So I would go towards maybe a talent, having a practical AI talent pipeline at the grassroots level for somebody sitting in a village to be able to be mapped and to measure what the resources of that person is. I'm sure the resources of somebody sitting in a city in a nice place like the Botswana Innovation Hub does not relate to somebody sitting in a village where there is no internet and there's no power. So I think how we solve all of that is that we need to think about designing, kind of mass pilots particularly around the agriculture sector, which is where Botswana needs to kind of look very closely to kind of develop innovations, and not just, proof of tech, what we call tech proof of concepts, which just get funded with grants. I think those literally die out in the market. So we need to do, we need to design intentionally pilots that are backed with research, what I call research-driven innovations. And I think there needs to be a marriage between the talent and the PhDs and the researchers. Whether if that gets done at master level or PhD level is not for me to decide. But we've kind of started seeing the edge, for example, around financing PhDs in Botswana. I don't know if that takes us to the answer towards that or not. Yeah, so this is the other part. So it might also be important to kind of think around beyond just funding these kind of companies, whether it's health techs or it's crop advisory companies. It might also be important to think around, creating the right instrument of funding. And I think you need risk capital to come in, and in a sandbox approach, right? This might be what Botswana wants to think about in the long term. Then I think also more importantly, when we speak about grassroots innovation, I know in the past where I said we had allocated about 100 million pula. I like to throw figures so that people kind of understand that Botswana sometimes actually does put resources at the table, but that money just disappeared because we had allocated money for indigenous knowledge research and to fund innovators and startups within that particular sector. But as far as I remember, we were unable to offtake that because the type of people working on indigenous knowledge are not your ordinary PhD holders, that are people with the indigenous knowledge. So how do you onboard people like that into an innovation pipeline, right? That's another challenge that I picked. We kind of have to solve here in Botswana, because some of these people, they're not like, they're probably people who live, like, for example, if you know about the San, these are people who can use awkward ways of healing, and how do you automate all those processes and export that know-how? So this is kind of some of the interesting things that come to me when people speak about AI and all that. So then I think there might be the need to tie community training to service delivery at scale. Of course, you can speak about deploying services and all that, but once you have not trained the average citizens, the ordinary guy in the village, again, has no pathway on how to use that particular technology that you might want to use. And of course, I've spoken about what we have seen in the past, where there's blended finance coming for subsidized access to certain services, which the support will mainly be supported through DFIs. I don't understand how this creates impact in places like Botswana, where there's already existing capital. Perhaps we want to think around, tapping into our pension funds, because we have like 12 billion money of our pension funds sitting in the US, funding R&D in the US. So why don't we take at least 2% of that, put it into local, funds, and actually start looking at specific sectors like the tourism sector, do it together with Angola, Namibia, Zambia, because we share that whole strip of the Okavango Belt. Maybe we could get some type of AI, agri-tech, eco-tech. I think we want to look at eco-tech out of that. Yeah, so this is what I would kind of look at the risk and trade-offs. But then, of course, we suffer the challenge of also execution in Botswana. We've not managed to really understand the aspect of execution. So it's important that we open, I think, those that have the know-how to come in terms of how to actually work with innovation where money has been thrown in. Then also we need to think about sustainability, because even as much as we've got the diamond money, we've got the pula power, this does not last. I think we need to think about collapsing a system where everything is donor funded or everything is one-sided funded by government. I think we need corporates to come in. I think where we sit, for example, at Pula Space, we have an R&D team at our company. So, and I've seen this even at Tala. So one of the simplest things is that you start creating R&Ds within private sector companies. So the largest company in any economy should have an R&D system in place. Then, of course, we're always going to have the regulatory and trust barrier issues. Citizens are always not going to trust. What we see also, obviously, a lot of these AI things, they bring scams, they bring cybersecurity risk, they just bring a lot of stuff. So while we talk about this, we need to also be transparent as government around what we're doing. For example, some of these things don't come in local language. So how do you expect the ordinary people to be able to buy into the AI and the technology if it's in a language that nobody understands? So we need to know, like, what are these things that are coming in being implemented in local language, or that are coming in a French language, that are coming in, and all of this goes to the sovereign control that we spoke about. Then lastly, I think the regional pooling for to be able to implement all of this is important. Like I say, I always like to emphasize this. Like if you're sitting at the epicenter of a place like Botswana, I think you're probably a launch pad. Don't think of yourself as the lead. You're not going to lead on anything. You already have South Africa ahead. So maybe you want to be the regional pool where things are tested, and then ultimately this could turn into some sort of advantage for you. So I think this is what I see in total, just to say, look, we've got to think about really impact first pilots. We've got to think about coming up with intentional procurement pathways. We've also got to think about blended finance, like a form of blending the finance that goes to this type of companies, whether if it's VC, angel investors, corporate venture capital, all of these things are important. And I think lastly is just to say perhaps even think more boldly around the AFTC, Africa Free Continental Trade Agreement. How do you pivot that to make sure you've got resources around that can fund some of these aspects of what you're talking about? So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Moketsi. I like the push towards having a regional pool and also the need for collaboration among states so that we can have greater capacity in terms of all the things that we need to do in terms of technological advancement, and also like the push towards transparency for governments and the citizens. So now I'm going back to South Africa, and this will be our last round. So Dumisani, you get to close this session. So given the persistent talent shortages across the region, what practical mechanisms such as shared computing infrastructure, regional fellowships, or even cross-border training pipelines could South Africa champion to strengthen the SADC-wide AI talent mobility?
Yes, also just being conscious of time, what I would say is that South Africa's AI direction is inseparable from that of the region. So whenever we think of these things, we're always thinking about it not inwardly or inward looking. We're always looking to strengthen regional capability, shared research, shared infrastructure, shared standards, but also sharing now talent. It's very, very important. And, the mobility and shared infrastructure, these are not things which should be based on anyone's goodwill. These are economic multipliers. They enablers, of our shared prosperity within the region. So when I listen to, for instance, Muketsi talking in terms of, sharing, this is truly very important, and where we then look at the strengths of various countries and saying, let's pool what we have. The truth is that the talent is scarce, but also fragmented. It's also unevenly distributed in our region. But the challenge is structural. It's not about individuals. And there's no country that can solve this thing alone. So we have to work, knowing that, for instance, if there are pockets of excellence here, we must try to distribute what's available. So what we want to do is to build a continental advantage. And, I think we need to think in terms of what I would call regional public goods in AI. And that should include, for instance, shared compute, shared talent pathways, standards, research networks, and the like. So we should think in terms of regional public goods as this region. So we understand, for instance, there's the GPU clusters which have now been brought into the region by, for instance, Cassava Technologies. These will help to give access, for instance, for university students, for startups. So we need to make sure that there's an effective way of sharing in that. But my question tends to be, why is it that this hasn't been able to happen? Why is it that our SADC region, which has so much advantages together, hasn't been able to work together in terms of pulling its regional advantages? We speak nearly the same languages. For instance, if you look at the Kingdom of Eswatini. The language spoken there is a language that is spoken in a particular region in South Africa, Lesotho. They speak a language which is spoken in a particular region in South Africa in exactly the same way. Botswana, definitely. Why are we not pulling together our resources? Why do we expect Botswana to go and knock on doors and actually purchase resources using its own buying power and its own negotiating power instead of using the economies of scale that we actually have? Why is it that South Africa, still goes out there to do trade without first saying, hey, how can we better pull together with Namibia, with Botswana and Lesotho? How can we make this an advantage for the countries which are nearby? So we've got to look at this, I would say, in a simple way. When we share infrastructure, we grow our capability. And when we actually grow this capability, what we do is we attract investments into the region. And so if we are able to then work on whatever impediments that we have in terms of moving talent from country to country, let's do that to make sure that we can retain our own people and build our own future. So South Africa's, I would say, role in this is that South Africa is able to convene. South Africa is also able to co-invest. So for me, I just think what we need to do is to just have that willingness to work together, to open up, our own infrastructure pathways and our own talent pathways within the region. And that would actually show leadership. So as we lead in a collaborative way, we've got to also to always understand that what we will actually help actually lift the capability of the region. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dumisani. That was comprehensive and very insightful. And thank you for closing this session for us. Ladies and gentlemen, and all the participants present, we'd like to thank you so much for taking part in this session and joining us and staying throughout. Due to time constraints, we will keep the questions and we will send them to the panelists later on. And now we'd like to wrap up this webinar. So today's discussion has shown that while constraints are very real, we've seen through all the explanations and all the insights that have been shared by all the panelists, including the keynote speaker, the globe and even the Southern African region has vast potential that lies in coordination and even contextualization and having people-centered approaches. And I think that's something that is very, very key, not just for the Southern African region, but for the world at large, even as we scale up AI technologies. Now I'd like to call upon Zamir Bray from the Gates Foundation to give the vote of thanks. Okay. Dr. Shiko, would you like to close with a vote of thanks for us?
Thank you so much for joining. Can you hear me or see me? I don't know.
Yes, I can hear you. I can see you.
Okay. Okay, one technology works one. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for everyone who joined and stayed on for almost 2 hours on the Christmas break. I know we all started our Christmas break on Monday. So thank you so much. We hope to be doing more of this in the coming new year. Thank you to Dumisani from the South African government, Dr. Zimba from Malawi, Dr. I've forgotten your name from Zambia, Muketsi from Botswana, and the gentleman from Namibia. Thank you so much. Southern Africa was well represented. We just met Zimbabwe and Lesotho, and we'll have been fully represented. So thank you so much. So we hope to be doing more of this in the new year. We are refreshing the indexes. Please do send us feedback. We'll call upon you to review the methodology as well as review the report itself as we did this year. So thank you very much and have a fantastic end of your year and happy new year 2026. All the best. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shiko, and goodbye, everyone. Thank you.